these kids are standing here with a propeller and nobody notices them. You understand? It's interesting. It was a culture shock. It was, I think culture's different. But what's normal was the propeller, and what's abnormal was a beret. A stylish, chic beret. I was looked at like where did he come from?
Also, it's been exactly 60 years you've been in America now, right?
In January of 1947, yes. I will be 61 next January. It's a lifetime, right? Maybe, probably. What do you mean, to train? Well, the train was... It was a devastating experience. It was stressful. As I said, humanity abandoned in our cattle car. In our car was not only that woman on crutches, but there was also an infant in a cardboard box. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks old. Without the mother. Now, the mother may have been in another train, or maybe had left, whatever. Dehumanization had started in earnest. Next to that infant was a man sitting like this. He must have been in his 60s or 70s. This man would have been entitled to have a decent end to his life. I was 21. To me, this was, get away. I felt threatened. I wanted to live. Simple. The rumors were flying, and they said, no, there's a rumor. I said, you know what? I said to one fella, there was a fella there with his girlfriend. She was sick. He kissed on her eyelids, on her forehead, and he had a leg that was bandaged, probably gangrene. It smelled to high heaven. Putrid. Pus. That's the way he was in that cattle car. And I said, well, if they find out you're right, we'll be killed. That will happen anyway. And if I find out after the war that my fear was unfounded, no, I didn't. I was wrong. I'll be glad to say I was wrong. But at least I'll be here to say it. That was my answer to them. If we found out it's wrong, so we'll admit, yes, we were wrong. The whole emotion, the whole gamut of emotions, if you want to know the mood in that cattle train. Arguing, physical pushing and fighting for space. Women consoling the children, a child crying, a man praying, front of the train facing east. He was a religious man. He was praying, and somebody in the train said, what is he praying for? Who will listen to him? But this, skepticism and complaint. And somebody else said, let him pray. Let him do it if it helps him. It might even help you. Maybe he's even praying for you. All these arguments going on, and these attitudes, the whole, as I said, the whole gamut of emotions. We didn't know where we were going to go, where we were going to wind up. But all we knew, my friend and I, that we'd have to get out of this train before it gets into Germany proper. That we could rationalize. Once we are in Germany, we would be taken over by Germans, and then in Germany itself it would be almost impossible to escape. Now, if I may bother you for a moment, every train, every convoy was accompanied by a letter, and that letter went from the camp commander in Drancy to Eichmann. Eichmann.
Oh. I know who he is.
In Berlin. Adolf Eichmann. Transport of Jews from the camp in Drancy. This is in German, but I'm translating it to you into English. Jews from the internment camp in Drancy near Paris to the concentration camp Auschwitz. In the Jew camp of Drancy, we have at this time 2,600 Jews who qualify for the conditions of transportation.
Meaning healthy enough to be transported?
No, Jewish.
Oh.
There were sick people too, and there were infants. And there were some men with their ties there, they're still Frenchmen. They still wanted to show who I am. When I get there, there's probably a mistake. I shouldn't even be in this train, you know, because he had the Legion of Honor. He fought with the French, you know, First World War. Old man. 2,600 who qualify for the conditions of transportation. This amount will be raised in the next week to 3,000, so that we can that we intend to set in motion 3 trains, each of 1,000 Jews, to Auschwitz, and the departure days are. We are considering the departure days as being Wednesday the 4th of November, Friday the 6th of November, that was mine, and Monday the 9th of November. The transport material is at our disposal. Departure from the train station Le Bourget-Drancy as usual at 8:55 in the morning. Arrival in Neuburg, that is already at the border, at 20:20, that's 20 minutes after 8, that's military time in the evening, you know, 20 military time. You know, in Europe you go by military.
8 p.m.
8:20. And arriving in Metz. We ask you for instructions, so whether these trains should be set into motion, and please notify the security police in Germany of our arrival. This how bureaucratically, how businesslike this was conducted, like they were transporting sacks of potatoes or bales of hay. But these were people. We were people. Yes.
Who's David Mitnick?
Huh?
He's inviting us to his sukkah for dinner on Thursday.
David is the neighbor across the street from Charles.
And I might work a few
Lunch
hours.
at what? No, you will not
I
work.
might have
No,
to.
I won't let you.
I might have to.
No, please.
Yeah.
Who are we going
We're
to?
short help in the
Besides, who are we going besides?
Did you say David Mutnick?
Mitnick.
Oh, I have a cousin named David Mutnick. That's so
Okay.
strange.
Flo? Where are we going else, you said?
David, I'm sorry, but I've had to ask Leo that he's being introduced first. David's here.
So this is, see how bureaucratically this was done? This was not just shipping people, this was like a like merchandise. And it was executed with precision. I never knew that we left the station at 7, in the morning, 8:55 in the morning. When I read the book, I realized, I knew it was in the morning, but I never knew it was 8:55. But every train left punctually. Can you imagine how this was organized? The murder of people organized in a bureaucratic fashion. The 20th century. I have to add the land of poets and thinkers, Germany. And helped by the French, naturally. Voltaire, Victor Hugo, Émile Zola, the Declaration of Human Rights, that's all French. Where did their history go at that moment? All by the wayside. And today I'm telling it only, it's never easy to talk about it. I'm telling it only so that you can take that into the future. Maybe it will never happen again, but who knows what's going on. We see it today too. We have a madman that just spoke at the United Nations. That was my escape. And the priest accepted us that night. After we got out of that train, he tore off our star. Did I show you my star last time? My Jewish star, did I? No?
Mm-mm.
Oh. This was given to us at Drancy. In Vichy France, they did not wear the Jewish star, but in the occupation.
Because of the Nuremberg laws, right? You had to wear the star?
The star, yeah, that wasn't. This is the original. This is now, that was 1942. This is now 65 years old.
What made you save all this? I'm just curious.
I saved it because I wanted to have it as a souvenir. Like, don't you save photos?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what it is. You go to a wedding, right? You go to an outing, a party, you take photos. Why? Sometimes you never look at them. What made me save it is, I think this is more important than a
What
photo.
is it? What does it say on it?
Juif, Jew,
Jew.
in French.
Oh.
Every country had
Can you
its
zoom in
own.
on it?
In Holland it was Jood, in Germany it was Jude, you know, in Poland it was Żyd. They all start with J anyway.
You.
This is the star.
What's it made out of? Is that felt or
Cloth.
cloth?
And you know, it might raise a question. These stars were produced. They were manufactured. People were working on this in factories, in workshops. When they were doing this, printing them, cutting them, manufacturing them, did any of these people who got paid to do this have any thoughts? What are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Why should we be doing this? Should I really take money for this? Am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing? Am I helping the evil to be perpetrated? Never a thought, never a protest. Einstein said, the world is an evil place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who stand by and do nothing. This has to come to your mind. That wasn't done in a vacuum. It was done by people, not by robots. But here it is. We tore off those stars after we had jumped off the train. It was given to us in Drancy. We tore it off. We walked the streets, and we approached the bake shop. And it was nighttime already. The bake shop was closed. And this was war zone, and you know, in the war zone, you have the civil defense. The windows are blackened, darkened, for civil defense. And this bake shop had a darkened door and window, Gesundheit,
Thank you.
allergy, hay
Yeah.
fever. I had it too, and then I got out of it. I had shots and everything. We wrapped the door at the bake shop, and a young man in his white baker's outfit came to the door and said, fellas, he says, no bread yet, not until the morning. Of course, bread was rationed anyway. And I said to him, I don't want bread, in French. Of course, he must have recognized the accent. I spoke French perhaps with a Viennese accent, but I speak French fluently. And he says, no bread. I said, we don't want bread. I would like for you to tell us where the priest of the village can be reached, where he lives. And he says, a moment, give me a minute, a moment. Put on his jacket, it was a raw November night. Un moment, he says, come right back with his jacket on. He says, I'll take you there. We walked about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. Came to the sacristy near a small church. He rapped on the door. The priest came to the door, and the baker's apprentice disappeared. He didn't want to have anything to do with that situation. You know, there are two fellas at night asking for a priest. They're speaking with an accent. Something isn't kosher, right? Something probably isn't kosher. He didn't want to have involvement.
The priest's assistant, that was?
No, the baker's.
Oh, the baker ran away.
He ran away. He ran away because he didn't want to be involved in that. That was too strange for him.
So after he showed you,
He left, and the priest says, what are you here for? What can I do for you? What is it that brings you here? And we said, we just escaped from a train nearby. And his answer was, oh yes, they come by here 3 times a week, we know that. So what can I do for you? He let us in, and we smelled the high heaven. You can imagine coming out of that putrid cattle car with the human waist and arms and from the twisted thing. I couldn't stand my own odor, my condition. I had to do it. That meant freedom. And he looked at us, and he could smell us. There was no doubt about it. We were obvious. And the priest says, fellas, he says, before we talk, why don't you go to the bathroom, a small bathroom in the back there, and use some soap and water. Clean up a little bit. Nice human gesture. In the camp we didn't have soap and water. And then we came out of the bathroom. There was another point of light. Humanity. Humaneness. On his small stove in the kitchen, there was a pot of milk warming for us. Imagine that. We didn't have water, let alone milk. And on his table, he had put down a platter with some fruit and cheese and bread. And then he sat down and says, let's talk. We escaped from that train. Oh yes, I know, we do this. Would we be able to spend the night here? Didn't want to run on the countryside as prisoners, you know. Our heads were shaven. Of course, we wore berets, but still. He says, I can let you stay here for the night. But between 5 and 6, you've got to leave here. Because the patrols come by here regularly every day to check us out. Ostensibly, they just want to walk in and have a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, or have a chat. But they're checking. Their eyes are all over the place. These are the Germans. You've got to be out of here by that time. If not, you're in danger. What you really meant to say, and I'm in danger too, because sheltering you puts me into the same category. I put us into a bed. Girls, I've never slept such a nice night. You can hardly imagine the total metamorphosis from that cattle train to that bed. Crisp white sheets, a down comforter, a white large bed. Manfred and I fell asleep immediately. And when this priest in the morning came to our bed and whispered, it's time to get up. Time to get up. We didn't feel like getting out of that bed. It was cloud 9. You can just visualize that. And then he had breakfast for us. And had an envelope with a letter of recommendation to another priest some miles away, maybe some 20, 30 kilometers away. And we arrived at that priest's sacristy early afternoon the next day. I mean the same day that we woke up, next day from the day before. And he read this letter from his colleague, another priest. He says, yes, I can let you stay here. And he didn't have a bed for us, but he had a little stable next to his little church, a farm. He had a stable, in that stable were 2 cows. And he took fresh straw and put it between the 2 cows. They were somewhat sort of a distance apart. And Manfred and I stretched out on that straw and we slept between 2 cows. Now often say, who would look for 2 fellas running away between 2 cows in the stable? Jewish boys, why? We felt safe and secure and sheltered, yes. And I like to say, the manure didn't bother us either. It was like perfume, more or less, when I think of it today, you know, because it brings back good, warm memories. Mm-hmm. The psyche works. You know, there was once a book written, It was a bestseller, and I was in the book business, so I know that. You are what you eat.
Oh, my friend's reading that right now. Actually,
Is that so?
I was just reading some of it
And
last
there was
night.
2 other books at the same time. One was called Sugar Blues, and the other one was called Killer Salt. Killer Salt, Sugar Blues, and You Are What You Eat. And when I'm telling you this, our emotional, psychological makeup is a sum total of what we experience. Isn't that true? So when I'm telling this story, the olfactory senses come right back, and I can still smell that manure, although at that time it was more like perfume. It was a good feeling that is connected with that situation. So we spent the night with that fella. The next day he had an envelope with us with 2 train tickets to Paris. Would you imagine that? We didn't ask questions, and questions didn't matter. We did not exchange names or ask questions. The deeds spoke louder than any names. And names were not exchanged for a simple reason. The less you know, the better you're off. If we get arrested and get tortured for whatever reason, we are liable to blurt out with a name. If we don't know it, we can blurt out. Or we could a false name. The less you know in a situation like this about somebody else who helps you, the better you're off, but the help was important. If we would have asked him, where do these tickets come from? There must have been some networking, right? I'm sure he would not have given us the answer. That was a useless question, and we have learned questions, do not ask questions, because you will not get the answer. And it endangers you. We arrived in Paris, we stayed a couple of weeks in Paris, we got a new set of false papers. My aunt, who lived in Paris in a hiding, she said, stay in Paris. And I didn't want to stay in Paris because in northern France we would have had to wear the star. And going back to Vichy France, we didn't need to wear the star. Also had left a girlfriend in the area there, and some papers and documents and some clothing with my friends before I left for Switzerland. And that, of course, Switzerland was October. This has already gone into November and December now.
This is 1942.
42. A new set of false papers. We crossed into the southern zone, and I was arrested in Vichy, France, and sent to prison. And I was sentenced to a year in prison for abandoning my assigned residence. Abandoning my assigned residence. This is the document. My prison document. When we were back in France in 1999, we visited the prison where I was, and the director of prison asked one of his guards to give me a copy of my record. And I was arrested and sent to prison and sentenced for abandoning my assigned residence. Remember, the mayor had notified us, and I ran away from that residence and fled to Switzerland, while I was not allowed to run away. Abandoning assigned residence, I was sentenced to 1 year in prison. And when you get 1 year in prison, you get a quarter of that year, meaning 3 months off automatically for good behavior.
Did you get those 3 months?
Plus 2 days, because after my trial, I escaped from the police. And 2 days later, I was back in prison. They had caught me again. That was another escape. I had 7 escapes all total.
What were the prison stays like?
The prison was, I was sentenced to, and I served 9 months and 2 days because I was absent. 1 full month in solitary confinement to be punished for having escaped. I was on dry bread and tea for just this whole week. I did some drawings there to pass my time. Prison was, like my escape was, as I say, what was the term I used? It was exhilarating. Prison was stressful for one reason. The main reason why prison is you sit and there's nothing to do. They gave me paper and said I could do some things and I would do it or whatever. However, I was assigned, a lawyer was assigned to my case. And he told me, you'll be better off in prison than on the street. On the street, as a Jew, you can get arrested, sent away, deported again. However, in prison, you are off the street. And my answer to him was, yes, barrister, that is true. But if one of the Germans in that guy, Flo, somebody at the door. Flo? I said, but if a German officer of the garrison there, they had garrisons in these French towns, or one of the militia, the French police, gets killed by a resistance fighter. You know what they did? They went to jail and picked up 50 hostages to shoot them in reprisal. I said to my lawyer, what if they kill somebody in this town of Tarbes? Where I was. Tarbes, that's where the prison was, the jail. Tarbes. In southern France also, near the Pyrenees. I'd be a sitting duck here. If something that happens in town, and they come to jail and pick out 50 people, it's the Jews, the communists, the resistors, the socialists, whoever. But fortunately, that's why it was stressful, those 9 months. When the final month came and I was released in September, when August came, I made myself a grid on the wall, and counted the days. And every day was a game to know that the day had passed and nothing happened in town where they would come to prison and pick out hostages. That was stressful. Those 9 months were really stressful in 2 days. After prison, I wasn't free. I was taken to a forced labor camp. And I was in that forced labor camp called Septfonds. Septfonds.
So that's still France, because it's French.
Septfonds. I was there for 1 month. And in October of 1943, we were notified that 14 of us will be taken, that's what they told us ostensibly, to a work detail on the west coast of France to build fortifications. I was only from September to October, 1 month in that camp of Septfonds. My friend Manfred came to visit me at Septfonds. He found out where I was because I had written to him from jail. And I had let him know where I was. He came there and I committed his address to memory because we couldn't write down anything. And he says, if you ever manage to escape, let me know. I can help you out with a lot of things. He had already. Manfred had come back he had escaped with me, as you know, from the train. Then we went to Paris. Paris, we crossed in the south. He left me to rejoin his brother, whom he had left in town before he was deported.
And then you got arrested.
What?
And then you got arrested.
And I got arrested, but he was free. So he found out where I was, came to visit me in Septfonds. I committed his address to memory. He says, if you ever escape again, let me know and I can help you. And that was it. I was taken with 13 others, 14 of us, by train to the train station of Toulouse. They had told us we will go to build fortifications. Now, girls, I'm not one to build fortifications, am I? Do I look to you like I can build fortifications? I also had a hernia that was never repaired. 4 years running with that hernia. I had fashioned a truss for myself. I took an old sock and put other socks into it and tied knots around it, and then I tied it around my groin so that when that bulge, the hernia came out, it should be pressed in. Painful, very painful, but it helped. I was taken on that train to Toulouse, and in Toulouse we were going to change trains or get further down to Bordeaux near the coastal area. And in Toulouse, that was a standing train this time. I escaped from that train. A standing train. Now
So before it left from the Toulouse station?
Station, yes. It was standing there waiting to either board another train or wait for the track to become free for traffic. I escaped. Now this to me was the most unusual, the funniest moment. Because if I had been a guard there, we were 14 of us and we had 4 guards. One guard was named Kaufmann. He was from Alsace-Lorraine, spoke French with a very heavy German accent. And he also knew German. From time to time I spoke to him in German. Now we had developed that Stockholm syndrome when you're in camp. You become acquainted with your guard. That labor camp was not, we were being tortured, we just worked to death. And small talk, he gave us the news about the war, how the war is progressing in Kaufmann. When we were in that train before we got to Toulouse, from Setfon to Toulouse, we were sitting there and he said to me, "Hey, you're not escaping this time," because my story was already known, that had followed me. My escapes had been part of my record. I said, "Mr. Kaufmann," jokingly, that was the Stockholm syndrome. You know, whether I escape or not does not depend on you. That depends on me. That's jokingly. And besides, can you blame me to want to be free? And he said to me, "No, I can't. I really can't." But he knew he had a gun, so he might as well play along with me. I didn't even know whether that gun was loaded. Some of the French guards, I think the Germans even allowed them to have loaded guns in case they should revolt against them or whatever. But whatever it is. No. I said, it depends on me. And why was it a funny situation? I'm running over time, so now we're making it. Why was it funny? Well, do you know the old European trains where you walk into a compartment, each as a separate compartment?
Well, you can't walk through them.
You can't, there's a corridor, yes. But the compartments are separate, there's a corridor in front of them, but you walk into the train may have 8 different doors to walk into the old trains. And each led into a compartment. Now there were 4 guards, right? We were 14 of us. Wouldn't it seem logical for one of the guards to come into the train to see what's going on in the train? Logical, right?
I think so.
I would think so. All 4 guards stood in front of the train so that no one would walk out. I had a friend there who I had met in the campus at Fon. His name was Werner, and he had his family living nearby. He told me that. He was arrested, sent to camp, the family, wife and children nearby. I said, "Werner, I can get out of this train. You're coming with me?" He says, "No." I said, "Why not?" He says, "Well, if they catch me or find me, they'll take it out on my family." You know, when you have a family connection with you, it's very hard to make decisions. If I had been with my family in that cattle train, I would not have escaped, because you don't abandon family. But he had that situation. I said, "When are you coming with me?" He says, "No." Fine. I said, "If you can't come with me, you know what you do for me? You stand by this window and look outside. If one of these guards decides to come in, give me a sign. Just let me know. In the meantime, this is what I'm going to do." I walked to the other side of the train and let that window down, took my beret. Actually, I wore it, and as I got out of the window, it fell off, and I picked it up and put it on again. And I was familiar with the Toulouse train station. I had been there before. So I said to him, "I will go out the back window. After I drop down, go back and close that window again." And he did. I went down on the parallel track. This was a passenger train that we were in. On the parallel track, there was a freight train standing. I got under that freight train, crawled underneath to the next platform, went my way downstairs to the luggage department, because I was familiar with it. And in the luggage department, I made out like I had asked my friend Werner before we got on the train, because his wife came there to say goodbye to him in Setfon. I said, "If she's in the train station, why don't you go ask her?" I gave him the money, I had some cash. I said, "Ask her to go and buy a train ticket." He says, "You don't need a train ticket, you're going free." I says, "No, I want to have that train ticket. Because if I run away, I need a train ticket. Because in the French train stations, when you exit the train station, you have to show that you had a passenger ticket. If not, you've traveled for free. You could have been traveling for free. And I knew that. So I had that train ticket with me. I went into the luggage department. I made out like I'm looking for luggage. I say, I'm looking for my luggage. And he said to me something in French, yeah, all the luggage is not here yet from the last train. You may have to wait a while. So I said, okay, I'll wait a while. And there was a door leading to the outside. And I walked out, and I was in Toulouse. And a few weeks later, I was hiding out with a Jewish family. They were hiding too. I contacted my friend Manfred. He sent me a set of false papers, including a birth certificate. My birth certificate was really looked so. I don't think I have it here. Looked so original that I could have been a Frenchman today if I wanted to. And that's the way I survived. This was my third. Dumont, Boucher, and the last one was Lefebvre. My last papers were Lefebvre. And I joined up with a paramilitary French group, and I looked like a Frenchman. And they were like the Boy Scouts. That was the Vichy young man group. They went to Germany for work and they collaborated, but I just wore the uniform as a cover. With that uniform, I could walk into a train, into a bus, and travel freely. I could go into a movie and not have to pay, like here, the Boy Scouts. And I was assigned, I joined with the French underground, joined up with the French underground, through the intermediary of my friend Manfred. His brother knew somebody and he sent me to that person and I joined. You had to have a recommendation, you had to have a reference. Joined with the French underground and I was assigned to the city of Limoges in south central France, Limoges. And on the 8th of May 1944, almost exactly a day, exactly to the day that I went into the hospital in Antwerp to have my hernia repaired. That was on the 9th of May 1940. This was on the 8th of May 1944. I collapsed in the streets of Limoges with a ruptured hernia. All the stresses and the running and everything, that never gets better. I collapsed in the streets, I started vomiting very heavily. I lay on a park bench, I had nothing left but bile. I lay on a park bench, violently ill, when a woman walked by, another woman. There was my mother who sent me away, and there was that woman in the train who encouraged me. There's a woman who walks by and says, young man, you had too much to drink, too much wine. That's why you're puking now. I said, no, I have a hernia and I cannot push it back. I managed, but I can't. I'm in pain. If you have a hernia, she says, you need a hospital. I'm going to call an ambulance. I said, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. No, I did not want to go to the hospital. I'm Jewish. I have false papers. I can be discovered to be a Jew on the operating table. I don't have to clarify that. That goes without saying. In France, they do not circumcise little boys. But here it is. I was taken to the hospital. This woman had called the ambulance. And the surgeon the next day told me, I was operated on, if that woman hadn't called the ambulance, you wouldn't be here. A hernia, a ruptured hernia, develops into gangrene, and that is fatal. That is when the membrane that holds the intestine ruptures and goes into your groin and gets caught. The blood cannot flow, and when blood doesn't flow, it's poison. He says, she saved your life. Never knew her name. And the next morning, the 9th of May, 1944, I was 23. I woke in my hospital bed after my operation. I cannot even remember being. I was put into an ambulance and immediately anesthetized in the ambulance with ether. I cannot remember anything being undressed, prepared, or anything like that. The next morning I awoke in my hospital bed and a voice whispers into my ear. That was the most startling moment in a situation where I also was the most vulnerable. In a hospital bed under the control of others, being Jewish with false papers, I'm trapped here, I can't go anywhere. And this voice tells me, as long as I'm in this room, in this ward, there were maybe 20 other patients in that ward. As long as I'm in this ward, the voice tells me, you have nothing to fear. I am your nurse, and my name is Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc, a nun. Hospitals in France are 90% Catholic hospitals. And the staff are nuns who are nurses. You have nothing to fear. Can you imagine what that meant to me at that moment? She adjusted my hot water bottle at my feet. Are you comfortable? And she came back and she consoled me. You have nothing to fear. And then in 98, when I wrote my memoir, wrote my narrative, and I wrote about this and got all choked up. I said, Flo, I said to my wife, why do I need this? Why do I need this? I'm torturing myself. I don't need this. So I have to relive the whole thing. She says, you're not giving up, are you? You know what you do now? You write to that hospital and find out if they know whatever happened to Sister Jeanne d'Arc. I said, Flo, that's 54 years. Why you gotta lose a stamp? I wrote to the hospital and I got an answer. After 54 years. Yes, Sister Jeanne d'Arc. They gave me her last name, which I'd never known before. Sister Jeanne d'Arc, Sardin, S-A-R-D-I-N, was with us till 1965. The last address known to us is Maison Saint-Joseph, the house of Saint Joseph, in the city of Castres in southern France, not far from Toulouse. She's there in a retreat for aging nuns. She was already in her 90s then. Write to her, here's the address, good luck. And I wrote and got an answer from Sister Jeanne d'Arc. In 1999, when Flo and I decided to go to France, I wanted to show her the places where I had been hiding. The jail where I was in prison, the jail where I was confined. They let us go in and take pictures and made me that document, as you saw. And we went to visit Sister Jeanne d'Arc in her retreat. It was some get-together. I was really sad. Sister Jeanne d'Arc and I became good friends. We corresponded. She says nothing will separate us. No big pond, the Atlantic Ocean, will ever separate us. Now that we know each other. She was in a wheelchair. She wrote to me, I said, I remember you when you looked at me with your kind, dark eyes and told me I had nothing to fear. And she has such a great sense of humor, she had. She answered me, the way you describe me with my dark eyes, please, don't romanticize it because I'm now an old nun. That's what she wrote to me. Is it beautiful? We corresponded. She put me in touch with her family. Her family sent me pictures of her when she was a younger nun at the age when I met her. And then one picture of her when she was a child, 11 years old. That's what they sent me, the family.
Can you hold that up one more time, please?
And she told amazing stories how she helped children being hidden, and they were arrested by the Germans finally. And I wrote about that in the paper after we came back. And a teacher at Bretholz school, she taught French at that time, Linda Clastel. She wanted me to come to her class and do a talk for about 20 minutes to her students in French, which I did. And then she took a class picture of those 19 students and sent it to Sister Jeanne d'Arc, and every student wrote a letter to her. Every student. Because she had told me, the nun, that she was once trying to save children, and the Germans came and arrested them. She could never overcome that stigma, that she couldn't save these children. They were entrusted to her and other nuns in another hospital. But as I told that story, in 2000, in January of 2000, I received a letter from her. Dear Leo, my dear Leo, in this new millennium, the year 2000, in this new millennium, after so many years, a modern miracle has happened, she writes to me. I have been adopted by 19 smiling Jewish Hebrew school students. I've been adopted. The 19 letters that she got. Isn't that beautiful? Last year when we were in Vienna, my book has been translated. And I went there because, you know, my book has been translated into German. I received an email from one of her nieces that the good sister had had a stroke and passed away. Something interesting. The day that she whispered those words into my ear, "You have nothing to fear while I'm here," was the 9th of May 1944. Jeanne d'Arc was buried on the 9th of May 2006. Is that a strange coincidence? Her nephew, who lives in Paris, wrote me a letter, and he took a line out of my book. And he said, "Those dark eyes that looked at you with kindness in the hospital in Limoges have now been closed for eternity." And we planted a couple of trees in her name in Israel. And then when he got the certificate, the nephew, that it was planted, he made many copies to give that to other nieces and nephews. And he wrote to me, "My Aunt Jeanne d'Arc would have loved nothing better than to reclaim the desert by planting trees." There's another person. That was my mother, that was my sister, that's the woman on the train, that's the woman who called the ambulance, and there's Sister Jeanne d'Arc. And anybody ever tell me that the women are the weak sex? They're the strong sex. You know, it's memories and has to be told just the way it was. And that's what I'm doing, basically. Telling it as it was, and hoping that you and others will follow you, will be able to make an impact with the story in the future. I hope so. It certainly is one of the stories. I'm just, as I say, a thread in the tapestry of the Holocaust. I'm just a footnote. Every story counts. Spielberg did 58,000 interviews for his Shoah project. And when he was finished, he said, "We don't have them all. The mosaic is not filled yet. It's not completed, but we will never have it." Some people can't remember, some people don't want to remember, some people I just not here any longer. But it has to be told the way it was and the way it happened. And with that, I think I'm not going to bother you much longer because you have other fish to fry. Yeah, you probably have some more questions maybe as I wind up to this whole thing.
So,
Do you need any names, any spellings, anything specifically? No, you can always call me before November to any,
let me think, do you guys?
Amber, got any more questions? I know you've got them all up there, but she can't quite think of them.
What happened that day, May 9th, 1944? After she consoled you,
Well,
got
I was in
better?
the hospital for 17 days, from the 8th to the 25th. When I left the hospital, was released from the hospital, I came back for dressings to be changed, which of course Jeanne d'Arc did also. She was in charge, she was the head nurse, she did most everything. The dressing were changed, she helped me with that, and that was May already, and on the 6th of June, the landing took place in Normandy, 2 weeks later. The 6th of June 1944, the Allies landed in Normandy. And it was, what do you call it, elevating. But the deportations didn't stop yet. They still took place, and the war wasn't finished yet. The war didn't finish till 45.
What went through your mind when you found out that the Allies had landed?
Did what? Did the Allies have landed? Well, it was excitement, joy. It was mixed with feelings that I have never known what happened to my mother and sisters. Yes, the Allies have landed. That might be the beginning of the end. The beast will be taken down, the Nazis. But it was mixed with, the exuberance was mixed with feelings of, where is the family? Now this is ended, but where and when do I see my family? That was still a puzzle. That is probably something for the next session, because that'll deal with what happened afterwards. And when I came to America, I did not find out, to just give you that one sentence, I came to America in 47, but I did not find out for the reality, the truth, that my mother and sisters had been taken to a camp and murdered until 1962. 15 years had gone by before I really found out what had happened to my mother and sisters. Up to that moment, there was still uncertainty. And I didn't start speaking about all this until that time, when I had found out what happened to my mother and sisters. I couldn't get myself to relate to it too much, because it was unfinished business.
How long? I was curious, the year from your first escape to your last escape, how many years?
The first escape, of course, was through the river into Luxembourg, but his first escape from the train was in November of 1942. And the last escape from the police was in September of 43, and then came on from the train in October of 43.
Okay.
So it was over a year, about a year, 11 months.
Your last escape was in Toulouse when you walked off that train.
That's
and
right.
to the
That
exit.
was in October of 1943, which was 11 months after my first escape from the train.
Did you ever find out? Oh, that's probably post-war. So.
My
I was
friend?
wondering if you found out what happened to the 13 others on the train.
No, I met Werner, the fellow that I asked to escape with me later in Limoges, and he was taken to a camp. And they did some work, but it didn't elaborate. His family survived.
What do you accredit to your ability to escape? What do you
Fear.
fear?
I mean, Like the odds. You said 5 people escaped from this car of 1,000. Is that what you said?
Not escaped, survived
Survived.
in the final analysis.
The only 2 who escaped were you and your friend.
And my friend from
Manfred.
Manfred.
So, I mean, I'm sure everyone was scared, you know. Everyone feared. So what made you and Manfred special? Of 2 out of 1,000.
We wanted to try it. We believed the rumors that we heard. Others were resigned. Others went. What was their resignation? They resigned to. We are getting where they're taking us, and what can they do to us? After all, they're taking infants. What are they going to do? They rationalized. If they want to kill us, they could do it right here. And nobody could, in their vast imagination, figure that they're going to take us there to be murdered. People wouldn't want to believe it. But we just, Professor Martin Gilbert, who endorsed my book, he told me there was just about 12 reported escape attempts in all these deportations from Drancy.
The 3,000.
Deportations?
From?
Over 70,000.
Oh, 70.
The book has over 70,000. 1,000 in each train, 3,000 in 1 week. But there were only about 12 reports of attempted escapes. In fact, I met him, and he was here in the scholar in residence talking here. And I said to him, Professor Gilbert, I have your Atlas of the Holocaust, can you sign it for me? He says, yes, I said, in your Atlas you describe 3 escapes, 3 specific transports from Drancy to Auschwitz. One on the 4th of November, one on the 6th of November, the other one on the 9th of November. He says, why are you so particularly interested in these transports? I said, Professor Gilbert, I was in the one of the 9th of November, on the 6th of November. You know what he said to me?
He said you were on a...
He said, if you were in that transport, how come you're standing here talking to me? He says, there were only about 4 survivors. I said, make me the 5th. I'm not listed as a survivor. The ones that have survived have a star next to their asterisk next to their name. My name has no asterisk by mistake.
Wow.
Here, Amber.
What a shock that must have been to him.
Yes. See, do you see any asterisks here? No. Can you see any here? They are far in between because only 2,000 of 76 survived. Right here, you will see some of them here. Little dots. Yeah. No, yeah. See one?
Mm-hmm.
See another one here? You can have a look at this too, Lelo. There's one. See my transport, number 42.
42 out of 70.
And it's transport number 42, yeah, out of
Out of
70,
70.
out of 76, 70. Actually, there were a total, I'll tell you how many were exactly.
Huh?
79 transports. 79 transports.
So that's 79,000.
Yeah. Whatever, so approximately some transports had 950, whatever, so whatever that is. But there it is, listed. Look, the transport 773, 1942, 6th of November, 773 gassed on arrival. Another thing, look how bureaucratically that was all marked down.
Yeah.
Look here, the oldest person in all those transports was born in 1849. She was 94 years old. The youngest were children, born on the same day they were thrown into a cattle car, often without the mother. 20th century. It's all marked here by the Germans themselves. And this guy Ahmadinejad said it didn't happen. It means the Germans invented all these things, right? Now, here's my name.
They invented thousands and thousands.
Yes, they invented. Now, here's my name. See this? Show it to you. Here's my name, Leo Bretholz. Leo Bretholz, born in Vienna, 6th of March 21. I have no asterisk next to my name. Do you see an asterisk next to me? By mistake they forgot, but my friend Manfred, you see here? He has an asterisk.
Is that M-A-N-F-R-E-D?
M-A-N-F-R-E-D. He has an asterisk. Why? When this book was done, he lived in Paris. I was in America. So they must have, when before they published this book, sent out messages. If any of you happen to be a survivor, or you know of someone, or whatever information you can give us, please come forward. So he must have let them know, yes, I was in a train and I escaped, so they marked him as a survivor. But I was in America. I am not marked. So they make a mistake too. Even the Germans can make mistakes. Right?
Yeah, like putting bolts on the inside of a train instead of the outside of a train.
Well, the outside is the Polish, in the east, the Polish trains had that. If you go to the museum ever, you will see, when you see that cattle train, you will keep thinking of my story. You see, he was in one of those trains, but look they are bolted on the outside. If that would have been the case, we would not have dislodged these bars, naturally not. But this was, and when we got out of that train, I said to Manfred, next day when we were walking away, we were in that train to Paris, I said to Manfred, you know what, 30 years from now, if we're going to talk about this, it'll be like a dream. He says, are you crazy? I said, what do you mean? He says, you're crazy. How can you think of 30 years from now when we don't even know what's happening 3 days from now? We had no papers, we were walking around with shaved heads. But I said, you know what? Why I say that? Getting out of that train tells me that nothing like this can ever happen again, and whatever happens, I will probably be able to overcome it, because I overcame this situation. This was the key. This was the, what do you call it?
The crux.
It sounds like that was like the moment.
That was the center one. That was the crucible.
The
This was
crux.
the crux. Same as crucible.
Yeah.
The crux. This was it. But, Flo,
Didn't take any soda?
sweetie,
We were too enraptured by the story.
you're all in rap.